We're learning more tonight about two parents arrested for allegedly tying their children down and forcibly giving those kids tattoos. Megan Farr is charged with 2 counts of injury to a child and 1 count of unlawful restraint, while Gunner Farr is charged with 1 count of unlawful restraint. KLTV7's Avery Gorman spoke today with the interim Zavalla police chief about the investigation into this disturbing case.
On April 12th, Lieutenant James Denby, the interim Zavalla police chief, was contacted by Child Protective Services about a possible case of child abuse involving Gunner and Megan Farr and 2 children. The children, ages 9 and 5, had made an outcry that they were forcibly tattooed by their mother and stepfather. The pair is accused of tying the children down with rope, covering their mouths with tape, and covering their eyes with a rag as the tattoos were being made.
There were other people, other friends of theirs at the residence when the tattooing was going on.
From the arrest affidavit, the children's biological father and stepmother notified CPS about the alleged abuse after the children were dropped off at their residence. The affidavit shows the biological father states that Megan told the children's biological father that she and Gunner had given the children tattoos. He claims she laughed about it and then drove away. When the father examined one of the children, he found a tattoo on their foot, which he realized was real. He also claims Gunner came by later in the day and said the tattoos were done with a staple. CPS was then contacted on April 10th.
There were visible injuries on the child at the specific location of the tattoo, and it appeared that the flesh was removed from the body at the tattoo location, and this happened about the time that CPS became involved.
Denby says a tattoo kit has been turned over to investigators.
Someone came forward and turned in a tattoo kit that she claimed was loaned. She didn't know it was going to be performed on a child.
The 2 children involved, as well as 2 other children, are now in CPS custody. Avery Gorman, KLTV 7 News.
Lieutenant Denby says the other people in the house at the time of the tattooing will not face any charges because he says they were not directly involved.